Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda and this is Birch and Lily, where I talk about all sorts of fun, knitty, crafty goodness. Today is going to be a video all about my dream fall knits. I have so many fun things to talk about. I went diving through my stash today and kind of picking out some yarn that I've been dying to cast on with and some projects that I've been dying to cast on, and who knows if I'll ever start all of these, but sometimes it's just fun to dream, and so that's what today's video is all about. Before we jump on in, there are a few places you can find me on the internet. The main place is birchandlilyfiber.com. I also have an Instagram at birch.and.lily. And everything else, all of the fun places that you can find me are all linked down below in the description. I'll also make sure to link all of the patterns that I talk about and the yarn dyers that I talk about, all of that fun stuff. So, sorry, I'm casting something on here. I'm gonna do a swatch while we're talking today, which I don't know how well that's gonna go because I have yarn to hold up, but the plan is to do a swatch, so that's what we're gonna do. Anyways, yeah, I have 10 fun, or I guess 9 patterns, and the 10th one is a, hey, help me out. So it should be a really fun video today. I'm really excited. I'm off to the side because we're going to try a different way of putting photos on the screen that will hopefully make my life a little bit easier. We'll see. But yeah, let's jump on into all of the fun knitty pattern fall goodness. Real quick too, before I jump on in, you might hear some chainsawing in the background. If you aren't on Instagram, if you don't follow me on Instagram, you probably didn't hear. We had a really large storm go through last Wednesday, and my husband's outside chainsawing some trees down. We had probably about like 10 to 15 trees fall in our yard, and it is a very large disaster. So if you hear the chainsaw, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm sorry. I don't think you'll hear it. This room is on the opposite side of the house from where he is, and I have the door shut, so it should be fine, but we'll see. I guess I'll tell you what I'm casting on with. I'm trying out, which hopefully will be a new base one day in the shop, but I've always wanted to try boucle. So this is boucle. We'll see how it goes. Me trying to knit this without looking might be a disaster, but we will see. Anyways, let's jump on in. Let me grab the first yarn and we'll get started. So the first pattern on my dream knitting list is from Penrose. She has some absolutely beautiful patterns, but the Eclair Raglan really stuck out to me and I've been dying to cast it on. There's a whole bunch of different versions for this pattern. You can put bobbles in it, you can put no bobbles in it, you can do a split hem, you can do not a split hem. What I want to do is the no bobble version with the fold over collar and the split hem is kind of what I'm thinking. But this yarn that I've decided to use for it, which maybe I should hold in front of my face because I'll probably have a picture up on the screen. This is Nutcracker from Explorer Knits and Fibers on the Rockies DK base. I have, I think, 5 or 6 skeins of this. Rockies is a 100% superwash merino. There's 274 yards per 100 grams, so it is a lighter DK weight, but I just think this would look absolutely beautiful as an Eclair. So that's what I'm thinking. Now I'm going to tell you details about all of the patterns because I still think that's worth it. I just think the fun part about this is showing yarn that I would cast on with, but we'll still give you the details all about the Eclair Raglan and every other pattern I talk about today. So let me grab my notes. The Eclair Raglan calls for an Aran, which when you look at the gauge that the pattern gives you, I think that is incorrect because the gauge is 22 stitches by 28 rows, which will give you a 4-inch square of knitting. I think what the problem is it's obviously not Laura's pattern writing. She knows what she's doing, but I think the two yarns that she uses to knit up this pattern, the like fluffy Surrey base and the other base that she uses, might be called like a DK and a fingering as opposed to a lace and a fingering, I think. Anyways, the way that what these bases are labeled, they're probably base weights are so hit and miss that it just added up to an errand in Ravelry and whatever. Anyways, that doesn't matter. The gauge is 22 stitches by 28 rows. It has 10 different sizes. You're ranging from about a 33 to a 69.5 inch bust. That's about 84 to 176.5 centimeters. The pattern calls for about 5 to 10 inches or 12.5 to 25.5 centimeters of positive ease. I think that's what I really, really like about this pattern is it's just big and cozy and then cabled. There's something about cables that really get me. So I do love the amount of positive ease on this. Like I said, there's so many different options on how you can knit this up. You can get rid of the bobbles, you can get rid of the split hem, you can do like a turtleneck collar. So I feel like the pattern itself is worth a purchase or a look just because of that, because there's so many options. And then construction wise, this one's knit from the top down. That's definitely my preferred way to knit a sweater because you can try it on. And looking at the photo of it here, it is a Raglan construction, which is also my preferred. I find Raglans fit me really, really well. So beautiful pattern. I think it would look stunning in the yarn I've chosen, and maybe I'll cast it on. We'll see. So the next pattern that I have pulled, I have talked about on the podcast before. I wound up the yarn for it. I was ready to start it, and then I don't know what happened. I never did. I still want to knit it. It's still on my list of things to knit. I just haven't cast it on. So this is the Patchwork Pullover by Claire Jackson. I have everything in this really cute Jenna Rose handmade. It's like a huge bucket bag. And I am planning to knit this. So it's obviously a patchwork sweater, so there's lots of different colors in it. This is the color I'm planning to use for the main color. This is from Brooklyn Tweed. It is their Puri base. It's 100% American wool, and the pattern does call for DK. I'm going to be holding fingering weight double for the whole pattern, because a lot of the skeins that I wanted to use for this were fingering weight and needed to be held double, so I figured it would be a smart choice to do the same for my main color as well. So this is called Carob. I do believe it is a discontinued colorway, unfortunately. I got it on a really, really good discount because of that, but I'm planning to use this as the main color, and then if I can grab them all, is this all of them? No. These are the colors I'm planning to use for all of the patchwork squares. So, let's see if I can remember what these are. Levi's. This is from Mulberry Fiber Co. This one is called Caterpillar in the Garden, also Woolberry. Now I'm going to have to look at my notes. This one is Pear, which is attached to my swatch that I then unraveled. This one here is called Cinnamon. And finally, we have Secret Admirer. I love the colors I've chosen. I feel like it's quite fall, which is definitely my thing. So I love that. But let's get into the details of this pattern. It is a dropped shoulder construction pattern. It is knit in intarsia, but it has instructions on how to do that so that you don't have to do any seaming. The whole thing is knit in the round intarsia, which you're still like knitting on the right and wrong side back and forth, but it has a way to connect it in the round every time you do a row so that you then don't have to seam up the one side of the garment when you're done, which is really nice. This pattern calls for DK weight. You're looking at a gauge of 18.5 stitches by 24 rows to get a 4-inch square. That's a pretty loose weight for, or loose gauge rather, for DK. So I think if you were feeling brave, you could try and do it in a worsted. With my yarn that I've chosen holding the fingering weight double, I think that should make a relatively, like I don't want the fabric to be see-through, but I think it will still be airy. It won't be too heavy, because that's something I find is an issue when I hold two yarns together. Not so much if I'm holding a Surrey or a mohair with something, but if I'm holding two skeins of fingering weight together or two skeins of DK, sometimes I find that can make for a really stiff fabric. But I think because this has an 18.5 stitch gauge, I should be fine. It comes in a whole bunch of sizes from extra small to 5XL. You're looking at about a 28 to 62 inch bust, or a 71 to 157.5 centimeter finished bust. The pattern doesn't give an exact measurement of ease that you're to have, but it says to pick a size that is about 15 to 25% larger than your bust measurement. So you're looking at a decent amount of positive ease on this one. With a drop shoulder garment design, that's definitely something that you want, is a lot of positive ease. Otherwise, it's just not going to fit you correctly. And like I said, this is knit in intarsia, so there is a lot of yarn management that's involved. But I think if you take care to like line all your skeins up in front of you and not just drop them in a bag and let them get all tangled, it shouldn't be a huge problem. And the other thing that I should mention is this is knit from the bottom up. So if you're not a fan of knitting bottom up, this one might not be for you. I think because the intarsia will keep me interested the whole time, I am less likely to not enjoy the bottom up aspect of this sweater. This next pattern has a bit of a fun story behind it, mostly about the yarn, but this is the Traveler hoodie crew. Depending on how you knit it, it could be either way, but it's called the Traveler from Andrea Mowry. I want to knit the hoodie version of this pattern. I did earlier this year knit the Downtown hoodie by Tori Yu, and I absolutely love the fit and feel of a knit hoodie. So when I saw Andrea come out with this pattern, I knew that I wanted to cast one on as well. Now the story comes because the yarn that I would like to use for this is from Mulberry Fiber Co. And this is called Corgi Caboose. Now if you're new to the channel, welcome first of all. But if you're new to the channel, you wouldn't know I have a corgi. She's amazing. And so when I saw Mulberry Fiber Co. come out with this colorway, I knew that I needed some of it. And then when I saw the Traveler pattern, which I know is something that I would wear all the time, I knew this was the perfect yarn for it. So I am planning to, if I cast it on, knit the Traveler out of this yarn from Mulberry Fiber Co. It is their Berry DK base. It's 100% superwash merino, 231 yards per 100 grams. So let's talk a little bit about the Traveler. This one calls for a sport weight yarn. It's got a gauge of 21.5 stitches by 39 rows. So that's why I'm using DK. That's a gauge I can easily get with a DK weight yarn, so it's a little bit forgiving in that way. There are 9 sizes available in this pattern. You're looking at a finished bust circumference of about 38 to 70 inches, or 96.5 to 178 centimeters. Andrea calls for about 6 to 10 inches, or 15 to 25 and a half centimeters of positive ease for this pattern. Like I said, there are a couple options with this pattern. You can either knit it with the hood, or you can choose to omit it and do a crew neck version. I think both are adorable. Obviously, the hood is going to take up a lot more yarn, so if I didn't have tons of this yarn available, I think the crew neck version would be awesome as well. It's a beautiful pattern, knit from the bottom up. It's got some fun, simple texture to it, but I think that keeps it really interesting. And it also has that same dropped shoulder construction that the previous Patchwork pullover had. So yeah, I think it's really cute. The sample is knit up, which I also love, and this is something I'll have to look through my scraps in my stash for. It's knit, the main body of the pattern is knit in a like beautiful red color, I think, and then the 2 like hoodie drawstrings on it are this bright pop of neon. It's either yellow or green, but I love that. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do as a pop of color for the strings on my version if I do knit this. Next up, if you watched my past couple months worth of videos, you would have seen that I was knitting up my very first Fisherman's Rib pattern. It's a pattern that I tested for Amy Loudon of Tailorist Studios called the Mayberry cardigan. The pattern is not live yet, but it should be out very soon. I was always scared of Fisherman's Rib until I knit that pattern and found out it's really not that bad. So I originally had purchased this yarn with the thought of knitting the first sweater by Lizzie Hester, but I've really realized I love cardigans just because they're so easy to throw on. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a pullover sweater. They're great, but something about a cardigan is more useful to me throughout the whole year because I can wear it in the fall and the spring too and just put it on as a layering piece. So while I had bought this yarn originally for the first sweater, I'm switching it over and I want to knit the first cardigan out of it. These are both from Drops. I've never used Drops before, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and it's very affordably priced, so I thought this would be a good pattern to give it a try with because it does call for a lot of yarn. So right here on the bottom I have the Drops Baby Merino, and on the top I have the Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. They are both in the color Light Sea Green. It's really pretty. I think it'll be beautiful for the first cardigan. So this pattern from Lizzie has a Raglan construction once again, but it's used in a creative way so that the body of the cardigan is just nice, plain, squishy stockinette, but then the sleeves have that fisherman's, or I think with this pattern it's actually half fisherman's rib, but that beautiful squishy texture of that fisherman's rib. And it's so pretty. It has a really beautiful balloon sleeve, a V-neck. I find I prefer V-neck cardigans as well. It's just beautifully designed and quite classic looking. So this pattern, let's get into the details. It calls for DK weight yarn. It has a gauge of 24 stitches by 30 rows. So that is a little bit tighter on the DK end, but if you're holding a Surrey and a fingering weight together like I'm planning to do, that should be just fine. If you're using a DK, I would maybe go for a lighter DK weight, such as the Explorer Knits and Fibers DK, which is more on the sport DK, like kind of in between the two end of things. Pattern comes in 12 sizes, which is insane. You're looking at about a 30-inch to a 64-inch bust range, or 75 to 160 centimeters. And it does call for a little bit of ease, about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters worth of ease. You will need a couple buttons for this one as well. I'm sure you can knit it up without buttonholes, but I'm not sure if that would affect the fit of it at all. I guess not really. If you didn't want buttons, you don't have to put buttons on it. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. But I do think the buttons add something to it as well. So looking at the picture here, you do need 4 buttons for this pattern. I don't have those picked out yet at all. Anyways, it's worked from the top down and it has a double knit button band. If that's something you haven't tried before either, back to that Maybury cardigan, I learned how to do that on the Maybury as well. And it's so easy, and I think it just adds a really polished, beautiful finished look to a piece, so it's not hard at all. Nothing to worry about. But yeah, beautiful pattern. I love, like I said, how classic it is and how pretty it is, and I think I wear a lot of blue and a lot of neutrals, and so I feel like it would fit into my wardrobe quite well in that yarn. So this next pattern is quite a new one actually. It is Andrea Mowry's newest Rhinebeck sweater. So every year she releases a pattern so that everyone can knit it up and have fun matching sweaters for Rhinebeck. Rhinebeck is like a big fiber festival in Rhinebeck, New York. I have yet to go myself, but it does look really fun, so maybe one year. Anyways, this is her contribution this year to her Rhinebeck sweater collection, and I've had a couple skeins of Spin Cycles sitting in my stash for a while, and when I saw this pattern, I loved it, and I realized that I had enough Spin Cycle to be able to knit this up, so I thought that would be a fun way to use it. This yarn here, like I said, is Spin Cycle. It's dyed in the wool in the color Light Years. So I have 2 skeins of that. And then I thought these colors that I dyed myself from my yarn shop, Birchandlily Fiber Co., would go quite well with it. So this here, the darker color is Graphite. And then this beautiful Surrey is called Christine. So I thought those would work quite well together for a tessellated pullover. So that's what I think I would use if I was to knit up the tessellated this fall. But let's get into the information about this pattern. It does call for a sport weight yarn. It has a gauge of 27 stitches by 38 rows. So I think you could get away with a fingering weight as well. And in saying that, Spin Cycle, I have heard said a lot, can be used either as a sport or a fingering weight yarn. So yeah, I think you could get away with either quite easily with this one. It comes in 10 different sizes, from a 33.75 inch to a 69.25 inch bust. It's about 86 to 176 centimeters, and it calls for about 4 to 10 inches or 10 to 25.5 centimeters of positive ease. Again, this is another drop shoulder pattern, so you want to make sure that you for sure have a decent amount of positive ease built into this one so it fits you properly. What I also love about this is that while the pattern looks like it's knit with colorwork, it isn't. It's knit with mosaic knitting, which is just a combination of slip stitches in a certain way to make the pattern that looks like colorwork. So you're never working with more than one strand of yarn at the same time, but you get the look of colorwork. So I really like that as well. It's such a beautiful textured, it kind of looks checkerboardy in a way, but not. Checkerboard is the best way I can describe it. I just love how there's such a different mix of textures in there too, because you're using the spin cycle, which has that real barber pole look to it. You've got the fluff from the Surrey, and then you've got just a beautiful merino skein in there as well to really give some interest to the sweater. As well, if you're not a sweater person but you like a vest, there is a separate pattern available to purchase that is just the vest version of this. So if you maybe don't have enough spin cycles sitting in your stash to knit the full pullover, but you love it, you could also knit the vest version as well. So this next pattern I've been eyeing up for quite a while, and it is the Field Day Jacket from Ozetta. And I have this yarn again from Drops. This is Drops Lima. It is, I think, a worsted weight. Yes. It's about a worsted DK. I'm going to be using it as a worsted weight. And this color here, does it say on the ball? No, but I have it written down. This color is called Taupe Gray. It's just a really pretty neutral, and I think it would be perfect for something like this where it's kind of meant to be like a fall to winter transition jacket. It's called a jacket, so that's what I'm assuming. Anyways, I think it's a great color that would match with pretty much anything in my wardrobe. This pattern, like I said, calls for worsted weight. The gauge is 17 stitches by 26 rows. It comes in sizes extra small through 5XL with a 40 inch to a 69 inch bust circumference, or 102 to 175 centimeters. The ease you're looking at here is about 9.5 to 10.5 inches, or 24 to 27 centimeters. So it's definitely meant to be oversized, layering. The sleeves are knit quite long, the body's knit quite long, and that's what I really love about it. It's worked from the top down. It has another drop shoulder fit. I know I said I love Raglan, and that still is, like, I think my favorite fit, but drop shoulders tend to fit me quite well as well. And so, I don't know, I just really love the oversized look that this field jacket has. A lot of Ozetta's patterns are like that, and I feel like they just make for wonderful, cozy, staple pieces. This next pattern here, I think I've talked about it. It may have been on my very first pattern roundup video, and I still haven't cast it on, but I want to. This is the Olive Cardigan V-neck by Pernille Larsen. I don't know if she's the owner of Knitting for Olive or if she just designs for Knitting for Olive, but she is connected to Knitting for Olive in some sort of way. I do want to use Knitting for Olive for this pattern. So I have two different Knitting for Olive bases here. This is the Knitting for Olive merino fingering in the color Cloud. And then I also have their soft silk mohair in the color Unicorn Purple. And so this pattern calls to actually hold one skein of the merino and two skeins or two strands of the Surrey mohair. I'm so used to using Surrey most of the time that I mix it up. So it calls to use one strand of the merino and two of the mohair held all together to make this garment. And I think the mix of this purple and this cloudy, creamy sort of color together will make for a really cool marl. So the Olive Cardigan V-neck is a all-over lace cardigan with a V-neck, obviously, as the pattern says, but it's just a really airy, beautiful, but it's going to be warm because it's got two strands of the mohair in there, very airy, beautiful cardigan. It does, like I said, call for you to hold all 3 of those strands together, which gives you a pretty large gauge. You're looking at 17 stitches by 24 rows, so it should knit up pretty fast. It's got sizes extra small through 4XL. You're looking at about a 37 3/4 inch to a 56 3/4 inch bust. That's about 96 or 144 centimeters. And it calls for quite a bit of ease, about 5 to 8 inches or 13 to 20 centimeters of positive ease. It's worked from the top down. It also has a double knit button band. Can you see a, what's the word I'm looking for? Can you see a pattern? That's it. Can you see a pattern? I like double knit button bands. I don't know why people say they don't like them. They're maybe a little fiddly, but I don't know. I love how they look, and I think it's worth it to me. So yes, this has a double knit button band. The lace is only charted, unfortunately, in this pattern, but if you haven't learned how to read charts, I highly recommend it. They're not hard to read at all, and I find it's a lot easier for me to follow a chart than it is written instructions. It's way harder, it's way harder to get lost in a chart than it is to get lost in written out instructions, at least for me. So if you haven't read a chart before, I think you should learn, especially if you're going to want to cast on this cardigan. Yeah, it's a beautiful pattern. I've talked about it twice, so I probably should cast it on. This next pattern is actually, I think, another one that I talked about in the same video as the olive cardigan, and I've had the yarn sitting around for it for a while. I just haven't had the, I don't know, mojo, the bravery to cast on a full cabled sweater, especially once you hear the saga that I'm going to talk about later in this video. Anyways, we're not there yet. But this yarn is from Mulberry Fiber Co. in the color I Smell Snow. It's like a beautiful taupey color with, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like steel blues throughout it almost. And I think it will be beautiful because with the cables, you definitely don't want something too busy, but I also didn't want something that was just flat. So I thought this was a really great compromise. And this is the Arctic Light Sweater, a pattern from Veronika Lindberg. It's absolutely beautiful. It is a pattern that calls for DK weight yarn. It has a gauge of 22 stitches by 28 rows. Comes in sizes extra small through 3XL. That's about 37 inches to 63.25 inches, or 92.5 to 158 centimeters in bust circumference. You're looking at about a 2 to 6 inch positive ease, or about 5 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. And yeah, like I said, those cables, this pattern is full of cables. You definitely have to pay attention to it, but I think it's so worth it when you look at the finished product. It has a beautiful rolled over collar and just squishy texture everywhere. I don't think, oh no, there are some baubles in it. They're small ones. I'm not a bauble hater. I just don't like them to be too large. So I do like the size of the baubles in this one. It's worked from the top down, and it has a raglan construction to it as well. And the raglans are quite fun on this one because they have a cable detail running down them. It's slightly cropped. Obviously that's something you could adjust, especially with it being worked from the top down, because you can try it on as you go. A beautiful pattern, and I really should cast it on soon. We're gonna slow down on the test knits in the next little bit and start working on some Christmas knitting and some me knitting, and this one is definitely near the top of my list. So this next yarn that I'm going to talk about, I don't know the name of it. I purchased this from Explore Knits and Fibers when they did one of their Leave No Trace updates, and I definitely know while it has Ice Cream Social ball bands, it's not from the Ice Cream Social collection. It's definitely much too dark. I think it might be, what was it called? Like, what? No, not boysenberry. Blackcurrant? No, I don't know. I can't remember what the name. I looked through their Instagram and tried to figure out what this was, and I can't remember what it was. But it's a very, very deep purpley black color. and it's super pretty. And I think it would look absolutely beautiful knit up in a Cosmo sweater adult. This is a pattern from Simone Ryan. She is definitely a newer designer to me, but she has some gorgeous patterns. This one is no different. And I don't know, it's just really unique. I don't think I've seen anything like this on a sweater. So this pattern calls for DK weight yarn as well. It's 22 stitches by 30 rows to give you 4 inches for your gauge swatch. And it comes in lettered sizes, so I couldn't tell you how many there are, but that's A through J. What is that? 10 sizes. That's 10 sizes. You're looking at about 36.5 inches to 64.75 inches for bust circumference, or 93 to 162 centimeters. It calls for about 4 to 6 inches of positive ease, or 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. It's worked from the top down. Can I say it enough? I like stuff worked from the top down. And it just has a really pretty broken rib detail on it that creates this V shape, and it's on the front and back of the garment, and it's on the sleeves. I don't know, it's just really different and really cool, but not too complicated, which I like. There is a tiny bit of cabling because there are cables that define that V shape on the sleeves and the body of the garment, but otherwise not tons of cabling, very simple cables if you haven't done it before, and it's just really classy. If I weren't to cast on the pullover version of this, she also has a cardigan version that is really beautiful as well. I can't remember if it's a V-neck cardigan or like a full, like, high, is that a high collar? No. What I don't know what it would be called, but like a higher necked one. I can't remember what it is, but it's really pretty as well if you're more of a cardigan person. I don't know if I would cast on the pullover or the cardigan now that I'm thinking about it, but either are very, very beautiful, and I think they'd be really pretty in that purpley eggplanty colored yarn. Kind of a neutral, but also a little bit different than a neutral, so it would add that teensy tiny little pop of fun to an outfit. So like I said, I have 9 patterns pulled, but 10 things I want to talk about. 10 yarns. So, I can't remember if it was December or January. It was probably about January of this year, 2023. I cast on the Amara sweater in this yarn. And I set it aside because I was having issues with gauge, I was having issues with fit, I didn't like what the brioche was doing in it. There was just a whole slew of things that I was not happy with. And the more I think about it and the more I've let it sit, the more I know that that pattern is not what this yarn is supposed to be. And so I'm going to pull it out. And with that in mind, I want to cast on a cardigan, I think, with my Fia yarn from Explorer Knits and Fibers. This was from their Ireland collection, I believe, and it's just a really beautiful neutral, but you can see like little bits of purple and green, and there's some like charcoaly speckles throughout it. It's beautiful yarn, and I want it to be something that I'm going to get a ton of use out of. So I am going to ask for your help. I have a couple ideas. One of them being the field cardigan by Ozetta. So not the field jacket that we talked about earlier, but the cardigan version. It's a V-necked cardigan with similar construction to the field jacket, but in a DK weight. So I'm kind of thinking that. I also liked the balloon cardigan by Petite Knit, but I'm not sure I have enough yarn for it. I have 5 skeins of this on their Rockies DK base, which is 100% superwash merino, 474 yards per 100 grams. So not 400, 274 yards per 100 grams. Now I can't do math off the top of my head, so I can't remember exactly how much that is in yardage. I feel like it's close to like 15 or 1600 yards, but that's what I have. I don't know. I feel like I want it to be a cardigan because I know I'll wear that the most, and then I can just stare at this beautiful yarn all the time. So like I said, that leaves it up to you. Suggest some things for me. What beautiful cardigans do you think this would look nice in? I wouldn't be opposed to a little bit of texture or a little bit of cabling, but I definitely don't want anything to like overshadow the colorway or the pattern itself. So is there a cardigan you've knit that you really like that would make a beautiful dream knit cardigan out of this yarn? Let me know. Yeah, because I love it and the MR just is not doing it for me. So we're gonna do something that I'm gonna love out of it. That is the plan. But yeah, that is all of the patterns I pulled today. If you didn't notice, I didn't knit on that swatch at all. I didn't think about the fact that I would be holding yarn up this whole time, so there's that. But I hope I was able to inspire you a little bit with some of my dream knitting. I know I'm not always the most creative with color choices. I like more neutral well, I guess there's some brighter stuff in there, but I'm a neutral girl. I've always loved gray. It's always been my favorite. I have gray on right now. But yeah, I hope I could inspire you with some fun patterns and yarn combos, and yeah, let me know some of your dream knits down in the comments. I'd love to know, no matter how wild and cabley they are. I want to know, because maybe there's something new that I want to add to my queue. So definitely leave those comments down below. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It helps out the channel so much. Hit that like button as well and the notification bell if you haven't, so that you know every time I upload a new video. I do upload every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, well, I guess Eastern Time we'll say. I don't know what the difference is between Eastern and Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyways, I will see you very soon. I'll see you next week for a regular podcast episode. Bye!